Hi, I'm Dr. Kevin Milo, one of the co-hosts of the Physician Empowerment Podcast. At Physician Empowerment, we're dedicated to improving the lives of Canadian physicians personally, professionally, and financially. If you're loving what you're listening to, let us know. We always want to hear your feedback. Connect with us. If you want to go further, we've got outstanding programming both in person and online. So look us up. But regardless, we hope you really enjoy this episode.
Now, so this is very exciting. We're coming off the big conference. So welcome everyone to a very exciting episode of a new year, a new academic year, I guess, post-Toronto conference. We had such a blast in Toronto. And those of you who attended, you know what I mean. And the rest, we just have to meet you at a different event coming up. But today, we're really, really excited to launch a new series and a new topic. And it's called What is Financial Freedom? Right, and joining me is our esteemed faculty member, Simon Wong. And Simon has many titles, MBA. He's got lots of degrees, and he's one of the very unusual wealth planners that are really good at numbers. And he could project beyond our life and beyond next generation, the whole picture. And he also has a CIM designation, a Chartered Investment Manager, which is a very unusual one for he's definitely not the run-of-the-mill planner that you would meet. And he provides product agnostic wealth plan, right? We call it a 360 wealth plan or roadmap. So let's dive into the topic of what is financial freedom. And there's a bunch of names: financial freedom, financial security, financial independence. So to different people, they mean different things. So Simon, give me your take. What do you say about these names, these catchy phrases?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is a lot of people tend to use financial freedom, financial independence, financial security interchangeably. And in my opinion, I think they actually are different things, right? I think when we talk about financial freedom, a lot of people mistake that with an idea that it's a number you've got to hit, right? Whether that be an income number, whether that be amount of money in your bank account number. But I would say it isn't, because we've seen it in the past. We see this all the time with physicians, right? We see, the physician that's in school right now that's going through residency, they're like, as soon as I have, I become a doctor and I'm making high six figures, I'm going to feel financially free. I'm going to feel really good about myself. And then you see the next level. As soon as the doctor hits that level, becomes a doctor, he's making very good money. He's like, well, as soon as I pay off my debt, I have a little bit of money, seven figures in my account, I'm going to feel really, really good. They hit that. Now they're in their 40s and 50s, and they're like, they still don't feel good about their money, right? The next step is like, as soon as I have enough passive income, I'm going to feel good about it, right? And at the end of the day, the truth is we see this all the time. It almost doesn't matter what you have or how much money you're making. You may not have financial freedom, because financial freedom is really about aligning your values and life goals really with your money, right? So a wealth allows you to live according to your aspirations, whether traveling the world, setting up a business, and supporting charitable causes. And you really need to align your money with those goals. And you need to have the ability to, I guess, really make choices based on what you want and what you need. And really, at the end of the day, instead of looking at your money as that financial freedom goal and you're trying to hit it, money is really just the tool to achieve those goals rather than the actual goal itself, right? So right. I would say freedom is just, you need to understand what your goals are and use your money as a tool to get to those goals, versus saying, my goal is to get $1 million or my goal is to make $500,000 a year. So I think that's where the confusion comes in. So
interesting. So this goes from a numerical exercise to something very philosophical, right? And maybe elusive, right? So some people say, well, money cannot make you happy. You're just like a dog chasing its tail, blah, 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 right? So there are lots of this kind of thinking and saying out there. So let's go back. Before I leave this, I think there's a little bit more we can extract. So financial security is different than financial independence, different than financial freedom. So let's go a little bit more, right? So financial security, people say, I want a secure job, right? I want a secure post. I want a tenure, right? They just want to be secure. What does that mean anyways?
I think financial security in that sense is it's one of the base levels to kind of having financial freedom. Financial security is kind of having enough resources to cover kind of all your basic needs and cover emergencies, right? It's really the foundation of having a really stable financial life. And it's I always kind of look at it as more of a safety net. It ensures that if something goes wrong, you get sick at work, there's a death in the family, you get sick, or some sort of emergency comes up, that at least with financial security, you have enough financial resources to cover it, and you kind of have a plan to deal with all these different kind of unforeseen events and stresses that may come into your life. So sometimes with financial security, that's a little bit easier to manage, because if we understand, what the impact to you would be from different types of emergencies, like we can put away enough into emergency fund, we can try to insure a lot of the risks away. We can have, different kinds of lines of credit set up just in case you need the money, manage the debt that you already have. So I would say financial security is a little bit easier to kind of quantify than financial freedom, because financial freedom, again, comes back to the fact that a lot of us don't really understand what we want out of our lives sometimes. And I see this all the time. You sit down with a couple and you start asking them, what are your financial goals outside of a typical retirement? They don't know. For the most part, they can't quantify it. They have no idea. They don't really know what that means to them is, right?
So what about financial independence? So some people call total financial independence, TFI. What is that to you?
Yeah, no, I would say financial independence is when you get to the point where you have enough wealth to live on, really, and you don't need to really work for that paycheck anymore. And I think that's where a lot of people want to get to in their lives, is where they say they enjoy their jobs, and they work because they want to, and not necessarily because they have to. So there's a few key components of financial independence, and we talk about this a lot in our master classes. Trying to put together different sources of passive income, whether that be rental properties, whether that be investment returns, some sort of business dividends, private equity, all those different things. Whatever way you think you can get there, is obviously having enough savings and investments, and really understanding your budget, your expenses, and trying to find the most tax efficient ways to manage your money. So I think that those are kind of, again, just those, again, I would say financial independence, financial security are key components to achieving financial freedom. So
right. And the reason we use financial freedom, I think it encompasses it all. And also once you understand all these facets, then you can give yourself freedom, right? So it's about the degree of freedom, right? If you have no degree of freedom, you have no choice, right? If you have no choice, no degree of freedom, you're a slave, right? And the financial security is not provided by a secure job or a secure bond, right? Like any bottom can fall out, right? So I think so we kind of still percolate in that kind of mindset. But why is it important to a person's well-being, especially physicians' well-being? There's a lot of burnout, there's a lot of pressure. We're losing, like in Alberta, I'm losing 60% of my colleagues. They're leaving the province. That's what the latest survey says, right? So why is it important to the well-being of a person, of a professional, to understand that kind of financial security, independence, or freedom?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, Wing. I think, again, the thing when it comes to financial freedom that that I would say, again, differentiates it from financial independence and financial security is, with financial freedom, you really understand where you want to be in the future, what you're trying to get towards. So it really makes it a lot easier to actually put together some sort of plan around it, and try to mitigate against all those risks and identify against all those different risks that you need to kind of protect against. And at the end of the day, like everyone else in the world, I think financial stress is probably one of the biggest stressors in life. Obviously, everyone knows that we need money to pay our bills. Everyone knows that we need money to do all the things that we want to. And unfortunately, I think, again, it goes back to the fact that a lot of people now, because that money is that tool that we use to accomplish all these different goals and do all these different things, they keep I think the main problem is a lot of us, whether that be physicians or different types of people, we we always try to make the goal around money versus having the goals around our actual lives, right? Like one thing I had mentioned during the empowerment event is at the end of the day, it's great to have money, but a lot of people, once you really start digging down on it, they have more nuanced goals, things like I want to be home for dinner to spend time with my family. I want to go to my kids' dance recitals at night. I want to work less and spend more time with friends on the weekend. And these are the things that actually are what people really want out of their lives. And having money to achieve those goals is important, and really understanding the impact of trying to achieve those goals is important. And that's what's really going to reduce your stress. Because at the end of the day, if you are someone that is working way too many hours, which we already know a lot of people in the physician industry does, but at the end of the day, if you're really scared that if you go from a 80-hour work week to a 40-hour work week, and you're not sure if that's going to be enough money in that when you're working a lot less to sustain your lifestyle and be able to save for this goal, that goal, save for retirement, those things will add a lot of stress for you, and you end up not being able to take a step back and really enjoy your life. So
right now, we don't have to talk about cutting your work week from 80 to 40. What about just taking a well-deserved family holiday? Right, taking 2 weeks off. And I remember the first time I bought the practice with money that I haven't got by my own practice for 60 months. My wife and I haven't taken a day off, right? At the event we share with everyone. And the fact of the matter is not just lack of coverage being a solo practitioner, is that the 2 weeks that you've taken off, you have no income, you have expenses, and then you have the cost of the vacation, right? So when you come home, you like, wow, you like $50,000 behind, right? So even that, right, quality time that you spend with your family to be away, even that is a major decision that is somehow anchored to a dollar figure, right?
Mhm.
So with that, it dovetails to the next question. So how do we measure all this goofy thing called financial freedom? How much do we need anyways? How would you guide your clients to measure it?
Yeah, no, again, that's a really great question. I think it's, at the end of the day, it's really sitting down and kind of doing a little bit of dreamscaping with our clients, because what is a comfortable life for one person is not what another person wants. And again, it's really understanding where you want to be, in 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, and really kind of trying to work back from there. Like I do a lot of time I spend a lot of time with our clients trying to work backwards and understanding where they want to be in the future, and basically working backwards and trying to figure out what they have to do now to achieve a lot of those goals. And I think it does help to kind of alleviate a lot of that stress around the money as well, because I think you're 100% right with the vacation thing. We have physicians all the time that are like, we'd love to take vacation, but here's all the things that I have in the back of my head that I'm worried about. Number one, I'm worried about taking a huge step back from obviously the clinic. I'm worried about now, this vacation is going to cost 50,000, but I got to withdraw $100,000 from the corporation, pay $50,000 of tax on that. What is the impact of losing that, extra tax money over the long run? Is there more tax efficient ways to do this? What are some other better methods for me to actually do this? And they start thinking so much about it. I think a lot of times that, again, it gets back to the problem of the mindset of we're so focused on money as the goal, and you end up never spending it, right, a lot of times, and you end up being so worried that we see this all the time. We see a lot of people too concerned about all these other things around the money to actually end up taking the vacation. And again, I think my main thing is when we're talking with our clients, we're really trying to make sure that they understand that money is just a tool, and money is just a tool to achieve the goals that you want, and align that with really align your life goals with, how you spend your money. And if you understand the impact of, doing all those decisions, and you understand that you've done it in the most efficient way, and that, you're already putting enough money away that you don't have to worry about retirement because we've already set up a plan. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about that vacation home you're buying in 10 years because we've already put a plan around that. You don't have to worry about your children's education in another 8 years because we've already put a plan around that. It makes it a lot easier to justify spending the money on that vacation now to kind of enjoy, because you've already put plans in place to achieve all those long-term goals already. So
now you talk about how much people save away for retirement. I got this a lot from our colleagues that are retiring, right? So how much, they kept asking, how much do I need to retire? And some people work much longer than they needed to because they already achieved that goal they didn't know, right? So how do you quantify that? How much is enough numerically so that they can cut back?
Yeah. So because it's it's a much more complicated calculation than a lot of people would think, because number one, most important thing you got to take into account is your spending. But the spending gets complex because the more you kind of want to spend in retirement, the more it's going to be impacted by inflation, right? Because obviously a 2 to 3% inflation rate over, if you want to spend 100,000 versus 200,000 makes a big difference. Because by the time, if you're really young and you're in your 30s versus you're in your 60s, the longer time period also makes a huge difference, because obviously inflation is going to impact your ability to spend in about 30 years. So typically what we do is we kind of do a little bit of working backwards. We take a look at, hey, if your debt is all paid off, your kids are all grown up, and you want to spend this amount on vacation, you want to spend this amount going out to eat, and you want to spend all these discretionary expenses. We try to understand what you want in today's money too, right? Because it is very difficult to think about that in the future money. So typically from there, what I do is I'll put together some calculations and change the income in the future to kind of determine what's the real spending. If you want to really spend about 100,000, and this is what the 40s is, they're like, well, I said I want to spend 200,000. Well, why are we withdrawing 480,000, 500,000 a year? Because inflation at 2%, 3% will increase your cost of living to that expense at that level. And then we try to also extrapolate out how long are you going to live, right? Like, are you going to live approximately age 90 to age 100? We kind of stress test that to kind of also ensure that if we work backwards from there, are we going to run out of money? Are we depleting money faster than the rates of return? And we also stress test the rates of return as well. So a lot of that, it just comes down to doing the math and stress testing it based on what happens if inflation is too high, what happens if rates of returning even adjusted for inflation. And here's the worst case scenario: everything goes horribly wrong. Okay, it does deplete your estate value significantly, but you're still going to be okay. And just understanding those kind of numbers and factors, and kind of even having a plan in place. Well, if something bad was to happen, and you inflation was way higher than you thought, and rates of return were really bad, we would have to cut your spending from 200,000 to $180,000 a year, adjusted for inflation. Are you okay with that? And just really coming up with different strategies and plans around, if something bad were to happen, what do we do in retirement? So there's a lot of calculations, but it's really also understanding all the worst things that could possibly happen to you and making sure that we account for those and we have some sort of plan for those as well. So,
right. This is really interesting. First of all, I need to make a comment that this kind of planning is absolutely unusual, right? Most I can tell from 30 years experience, and I'm a well-rounded entrepreneur in real estate and finance, and most financial advisors, to be honest, to be politically incorrect, but brutally honest, they're selling us a product, right? They don't plan, like, it's like how many of you have had this kind of planning, right? But this is like a project projection, right? So I deal with real estate, right? So every project we have the pro forma that we project, right? And there's a lot of assumptions. When you buy real estate shares like REIT, or you buy into limited partnership, or you buy into any private equity, even public equity stuff, there's building a lot of projection, right? And nobody has the crystal ball, right? So you use the good faith, and you have assumptions, and you test your assumptions. They're called sensitivities, right? And so hopefully one of these days we'll talk about those in the real estate course that we're going to do next year. but that's a third-party project. This now, Simon, you're doing this project is you. This is you. You don't have a crystal ball, but this is where the future you might go into. Right, and how much do you need to spend? Right, it's like when we get on the phone and say, "I want to go to somewhere." Right, the first thing they ask, "Where are you?" Right, where are you, and where are you going to? Right, and what's the path? Estimated 30 minutes, 40 minutes, right, faster, right, and some apps tell you, like Waze, I think this is called, right, how much traffic jam there is there, this and that, a car crash or construction, right? So I think what you're trying to do, Simon, is saying that there is a roadmap for this. Right. Yes. There's more than one way to skin the cat, so to speak, the different routes, but we have to know where we are at. right? How we get there, and what is it going to take, and what can we do to pivot, right? That's why the security, I'm against this thing called all you need is a secure something. Well, the most secure place on planet Earth is maximum security, right? There's no absolute financial security. There's also financial opportunity, right? So we need to learn to pivot, right? Like you say, if the return goes up or goes down, if inflation goes up and your returns is not following the inflation, what are we going to do, right? And of course, at the end of the day, it's hypothetical. We have no guarantee, right? For example, I didn't know how many more years I can practice, right? And neither could you. You could be 30 years younger, right? I told everybody I got infected endocarditis one Christmas day, and I lost like a few months of income. And I really test drove the insurance process and found out that I underbought my insurance 30 years prior, right? And these are part of a security net, right? But we needed to create. And those are the things that need to be discussed and thought through, right? So is financial freedom, financial independence, right? And again, TFI, I learned eons ago, TFI, total financial independence, equals to when your multiple sources of passive streams of income would exceed your monthly obligatory expense, right? Stuff that you have to pay off every month, right? Rather you lie in the ICU bed, just have to pay that mortgage, or hopefully no mortgage by then, but who knows, right? Expenses, taxes, and all that, right? So that is itself it's a big goal. It's a big goal, right? But then what I've learned is the passive incomes are not necessarily replacing your active income, right? Because as we go up, I found that the other night, my wife and I last night just had this discussion. When are we free? Well, as we age and we grow in a profession, these are my top earning years, right? Like these truly are, right? Look back in the back, right? In history. So the passive income needs to keep going up, right? In the best income years, and then you'll never retire, right? Until you drop dead. And that's not true. The passive incomes do not exceed the active incomes. The passive incomes just have to cover the monthly obligatory expenses. And you can also decide how much that is, right? There's a lifestyle. You can retire a lot sooner or cut back a lot sooner if you don't have a very high expensive taste, or you can retire a very exuberant style and cost you a lot more, right? Some people go on a cruise every month, right? That's a different thing than taking a cruise a year, right? Like, for example, right? That's as an example, right? So is it a pipe dream? Is it realistic, or is it achievable? Simon.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said you talked a little bit about risk. And I think that financial freedom it's almost impossible to 100% achieve, because there's always going to be a risk in your life, right? Even if you get that passive portfolio that covers all your expenses, let's say it's a real estate portfolio, there's always a degree of risk that, okay, what happens if interest rates go up and now it eats into my income? What happens if I lose a bunch of renters? What happens if there's a fire at one of my properties and it gets damaged? There's always some degree of risk that has to be managed when it comes to that. And you even said that, with passive income, it always has to go up. Even if you're comfortable now, you're always also thinking about, what about 10 years now, 20 years from now? What happens if inflation goes up significantly and now I can't, what I thought was a good passive income isn't going to be enough to sustain the lifestyle I really want. So I think that it can never be 100% achieved, in the sense that you're never going to be 100% feeling good about it at all. But you can feel pretty good about your financial freedom as long as you kind of have it. You've taken into account, everything that you wanted to, and you've taken into account the risk that you want to, the risk that may potentially come up, and you've already come up with some sort of plan to mitigate against that. And maybe if you're typically, when we sit down with clients and you chat with them, when they're thinking about their financial freedom, they're feeling at a 20% sometimes, right? And by the time we finish with them, maybe they're at a 60%. We work with them for a few more years, and they have a little bit more savings. Their financial freedom, they're feeling a little bit better at a 70%, right? And eventually you get to that point where you're feeling, really, really good. Maybe you're at 95% feeling that, about your financial freedom. But, I think that and that's okay. You shouldn't always feel 100% that everything is going to always be okay, because there's always going to be risks in life. And I think you should always take steps to kind of protect against that, whether you're starting out in life as a new physician, whether you're mid-career, or even if you're a career. These are all things I think you should always kind of think about and have someone kind of help guide you, because, again, it's almost like I like to use the analogy of health, right? Like when you start, working out and trying to look better and feel better, a lot of times you get to that next level, you get to the next level. I don't always, I always don't think that you get to a final goal of like, this is it. I don't need to exercise anymore. I don't have to look after my health anymore. I've hit my goals. I'm done. I think finances is the same way. You should always kind of look at it like your health, right? Like you always should be a little bit working on it. You should always kind of put a little bit of effort into it. And again, having a little bit of financial stress is okay, because that keeps you on your toes and ensures that you're kind of keeping an eye on the ball. And again, I've seen it when people are 100% like, oh, I feel really good about my money. They kind of let it slide. They're not watching their spending suddenly, right? Then they're not taking into concern some of the different risks that are involved. They're like, oh, we don't have to do this. And that's usually when you get into trouble, is when you're almost too comfortable with your finances. So that's why I always tell clients, like, I get that you're feeling at a 70% for financial, your financial independence and financial freedom, but that's a good thing. You never want to be at 100%. So,
well, it's like mid-course correction, they call it, right? Flying, right? Let's say from Vancouver to Beijing or wherever, right? Like it's a long flight, right? And so there's always mid-course correction, right? If you fall asleep and then an hour later you could go a totally different direction, right? So there's a lot of checks and balances. But I think it's important for us to understand that there are milestones, right? This is not a dreaming, we mean just a crystal ball thing, black magic, right? There is science, there's art and science, right? There are milestones, there's some concrete milestones we can achieve. And then if you have a good coach to work with you, then they can tell you, hey, this is kind of our point, but what are we doing, right? And we could pivot, we could strategize, right? There's strategies. So to wrap this up, can you give us some examples, some people who've done it well, who actually could enjoy freedom? There are people who thought they couldn't, and there are people who actually arrived and they didn't know, still didn't feel good about themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Yeah, no, I think, I've had a few examples of, a couple physicians that, that have done really well, where, we've really sat down with them and they, when they initially sit down, a lot of the physicians already had advisors, and they're like, we've had investments where we've got 7 figures saved. I'm doing last year I made a 15% rate of return, and my average rate of return is 6-7%. It seems like I'm doing really good, but I don't know if I'm doing good, right? And that's where the stress comes in. They don't know. And then you ask them, and again, when we sit down with them, really, like, what do you want to do with this money? What do you want to do? Like, what is your life goal? What do you actually want to achieve? You have a lot saved right now. You're making good amounts of money. And I think one of the big things was this physician had mentioned, well, I've always had a dream of retiring early and kind of taking flying lessons and becoming a part-time pilot, because that's just what I've always dreamed as a kid. I just never thought I could, because I don't know if I'm even saving enough money. I don't know if I can take a step back from work. I don't know when I can retire, right? And well, tell me about your retirement, right? Like, what does it look like? Is it extravagant? No. I just want to. I live in a modest house. I just want to pay my expenses. I want to go on maybe a vacation a year, well, once or twice a week to eat with my family, and that's it. Okay, let's work out those numbers. Let's take a look at all those numbers. And, we do some calculations on that, and we're like, okay, actually, according to the numbers I ran, you should be safely be able to retire within the next 5 years and actually achieve this goal. Because in his head, his first thought was, oh, I this is a 15-year in the future kind of goal, right? Because I don't know how much money I actually need. And kind of, again, working backwards from where do you want to be in this few years, whether that be, do you still want to be a physician? Do you want these other goals? And I do. I still want to work part-time. Okay, perfect. So you, again, show them the numbers, understand the math around it, and kind of say, hey, by this age, according to my numbers, you have enough money to pretty much live for the rest of your life where you never run out. We've stress tested it. You're not going to run out even with the worst case scenario with bad inflation, high inflation rate, increased costs. You're still going to be okay. And that kind of gave him the comfort that he at least knew that he had a plan to and a number to hit in the next 5 years. And that number, that money number, was already connected to all these different goals, like in terms of wanting to work part-time, wanting to become a pilot, wanting to do all these things that he's always wanted to do. And suddenly he did feel a lot better about his finances, because he knew that now that he actually had something to work towards, there was a defined number, 5 years. This is the number we're going to get to. This is what your actual spending is going to be in retirement, where you would never run out of money. Here's when you can do, how much time you actually have to spend at work. This is the minimum amount. You don't need to, but this is what you can do. So I think really having a better sense of what you're spending your money on for this physician just gave him a much better feeling of what he was wanting to do, because he just didn't know where he was actually trying to get to at the end of the day. And he had all these pie in the sky ideas that he never actually put down on paper. He just, and his wife was even a little bit surprised when he said all these things, because he thought about them, but he didn't really believe those were true goals until we actually chatted about it. So,
well, I can relate as a man, right? Breadwinner in my house, if I cannot fulfill something, I'd rather just bury them deep down, right? Not even telling your spouse. And so this guy now could do a 5-year plan and start taking his flying lessons, right? And we're not getting younger. I know a lot of my colleagues do aviation medicals, right? They're not always easy to pass, right? That's a good example. So do you have a different example?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, again, sometimes it's a bigger goal like that, right? Where you want to take a step back from work, where you want to completely kind of almost change your life. But a lot of times, when we sit down, it's almost understanding all the smaller things that will make someone happy. So, in fact, this client wasn't necessarily a physician, but was a small business owner, was very entrenched in his business, working again a ton of hours, and he got into the trenches, and I got to make money, I got to support my family, and you sit down and talk to him like, you're making a lot of money, you're saving a lot. What do you actually want to do with your life? And it for him, it really came back to, I want to spend my weekends fishing. I want to go to my kids' baseball games at the end of the night. I want to go to my other kids' hockey games when we can. And just really sitting down and understanding that he really just wanted more free time for all these other things he wanted in his life. But again, it came back to the fact that he had this money goal in his mind. He was like, I need to make $5 million by this amount of time. And he had to set that in his head. And once we started actually sitting down and talking about it, well, why did you think about that number? Well, it just sounds like a really big number, a really good number. What do you want to spend with that? What do you want to spend that $5 million on? Well, I don't have an idea of that. And we start getting more into like, okay, what does your 50s look like? What do your 60s look like? What do your 70s look like? And, a lot of the goals again came down to, I want to spend more time with my family. I want to have a simple life. And we started running backwards again, working backwards from numbers and realizing, you know what, you came up with this $5 million goal, but that's not really actually what you want. This is what you actually want. And understanding that, you actually want to spend more time with the family. That's not the money. You just came up with again, like a lot of people have, they come up with a goal for financial freedom is this specific amount of money. But you should be working again backwards from what do you actually want out of life. And when we did a calculation, we actually figured out that he had actually way more money than he needed to achieve all his goals. And he was way further ahead according to his spending, according to his future goals in terms of where he wanted to live, when he wanted to take a step back from work. And he, it almost gave him the permission to be like, you know what, I actually don't need to spend the weekends in the office. I don't need to spend the evenings trying to, work all these extra hours. I could actually take a step back because you know what? I didn't really quantify my goals and understand that this is what I really wanted. And it wasn't just the money, right? And I think that's another important thing that we tend to get lost in, especially when we're dealing with any kind of high income earner, whether a business owner or a physician, is that we do tend to kind of focus more in on things that we can see, like the quantitative versus the qualitative things in life. So,
well, I think that really hit a nerve, right? So we postpone gratification, delayed gratification, right? So many years of med school. Nowadays you have a degree or two people in med school, and then you have residency, you have some fellowship, some people do a PhD, right? Like and afterwards get another degree or something, right? So then there's so many lost earned years that we thought, okay, we're just gonna keep going, right? And 100 hours, 80 hours a week, right? And so then it's just called nose down, bum up, and you don't even want to breathe, right? You just like blinds on, like horse racing, you just kept charging. But then somewhere there you lost in the work, right? And for people who do shift work, they may pick up too many shifts, right? Pick up too many patients in the panel, right? And then at the end of the day, you blink, and years and decades gone by, and your family got estranged, right? And of course, I'm talking broad-based. I'm not trying to offend anybody, but there's a lot of people that could relate, right? So I think this freedom thing is really, really important for us, right? Not just yonder, I hit so many million that I can just say goodbye, but it impacts your lifestyle right now. So a little bit advertisement. So this is a journey that we're going to embark, and everybody has a different journey, right? I think we want to paint a picture that there's a lot of unknown, but there's more science than just black magic, right? And so come back in 2 weeks. That will be a Wednesday night, right? End of the month. We'll do a masterclass. Those of you masterclass students, we'll welcome you. Come back and we'll do a lot more deep dive than the fireside chat, but we'll do more didactic stuff and actually more into mechanics and some examples, and also different stage, right? For some people here from different stage, some that are saying millions, I'm like $500,000 in debt, right? I can't even see myself getting out of my student loan and the collective other loans. And there are people who say, yeah, like I want to retire next year, right? Or some they're forced to retire, right? And so I think it's relevant, right? I think there's a spot for everyone, right? So as we unpack this journey, we want to give people the tool, right? Like you go to a camping trip, you're going to pack your backpack. What do you need to pack, right? And what does the map look like? And then we have different faculty members over the next 12 months. We'll take advantage of each faculty member's strengths and their specialties and unpack some of these things and as we go along. Okay, so and I want to thank Simon again for your valuable time and your wisdom, your perspective, and we look forward in 2 weeks to have some more deep dive in this topic and how it's applicable to us.
Thank you so much for listening to the Physician Empowerment Podcast. If you're ready to take those next steps in transforming your practice, finances, or personal well-being, then come and join us at physempowerment.ca, PHYS empowerment.ca, to learn more about how we can help. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd really appreciate it if you would share our podcast with a colleague or friend, and head over to Apple Podcasts to give us a 5-star rating and review. If you've got feedback, questions, or suggestions for future episode topics, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to join us and be interviewed and share some of your story, we'd absolutely love that as well. Please send me an email at kmilo@physempowerment.ca. Thank you again for listening. Bye.